Welcome to the Getting High on Leadership series featuring Paul Karasik. Paul is one of America's top management consultants helping leaders succeed. He is the author of 9 books, including Sweet Persuasion and Brilliant Thoughts and Provocative Questions. His insights appear regularly in major publications, and he is one of the most sought-after executive coaches. Paul founded the American Seminar Leaders Association and the Psychedelic Institute of Los Angeles. He is a popular speaker at national conferences and has been on stages across all 50 states and internationally. Paul's work addresses the question, how can we transform conflict in business into collaboration? With decades of experience in management, leadership, and psychedelics, he brings a unique perspective on personal and societal growth. In this series, we'll be discussing his latest book, Getting High on Leadership, The Leader's Guide to Higher Consciousness. We'll be exploring the concepts, techniques, and mindset required to revolutionize leadership. Enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Getting High on Leadership series. My name is Sanchez, your host for the series, and we are joined by the author of the book, Paul Karasik. Making our way through section by section, as you know, today we're talking about the section, A True Story, from page 52 of the book, as we're nearing the end of part 1. Welcome, Paul, and where can we begin with truth?
Yeah, this is a true story. We talked about the format of the book. Throughout the book, there's about 10 or 12 little stories that I've collected over the years as a management consultant that I thought were particularly meaningful, had a lot of gravity to the story, and just appealed to me. And this is one of those stories that I've carried around for many, many years, actually since I first heard it. And the story is about somebody looking for riches and frustration, and that went along with that. It's an ironic kind of story that there's an ironic ending to it. Don't want to read the story right now. We've got it available. Everybody can take a look at it. But the crux of the meaning of this chapter is, where do we find those revolutionary ideas? In the last chapter, we talked about revolution. So we said, well, first let's question. Let's question everything. That was kind of a theme in the 60s, too. I think maybe I don't think it was born in the 60s, but it was a theme that we heard a lot. Let's question everything.
The kind of that counterculture movement and the critic kind of mindset on the societal level was running rampant.
Yeah, it was everything. It was like for example, let's question food. Do we really need 7 food groups? That's a concept. It was created relatively recently. For many years, people lived long lives eating all kinds of diets and didn't need 7, whatever it is, food groups or whatever it is. But let's question that as a concept. Let's be open to that, the possibility. So where do we find, after we question, where does the new idea come from? Where does that creative spark come from? How do we generate it? And that's really the theme for this. And it's a theme that we've heard quite a few times through the course of this book. It's reinforcing it. The idea of where to look for consciousness, where to look for creative ideas. And it's inside. And consciousness doesn't, it's available to us internally. And so for the new ideas, sure, the team and work creatively and brainstorm and all that other stuff. But as a leader, where do your creative ideas come from? They come from, in this case, the diamond mind in this story. That's where the diamonds are. And to get that revolutionary idea, we have to begin to get access to that we'll call it the universal mind, and we've talked a little bit about that in the past. That's where the new ideas come from, the universal mind. The universal mind, it's funny, I've been thinking about this concept a little bit in the past few days, and the universal mind is intelligence beyond what our ego and our experience and our memories can provide. Accessing the universal mind is accessing universal intelligence that's way beyond our personal learned intelligence. For example, let's just take the healing of a cut. The amount of processes, the amount of chemical processes, actual things that have to happen for that cut, between the coagulation of the blood, between the different antibiotic substances that are there that go to the site to prevent, all these things are happening. But they're not happening with our intelligence. They're happening with universal intelligence. And what I'm proposing is that universal intelligence trumps art intelligence in every single way, exponentially trumps it. That's the source of the great ideas, the great concepts, the revolutionary ideas.
And so, it was kind of there all along. It's been there all along, and it's been there now. You don't have to up and sell the entire farm and go look for it.
No,
I think is what this section's also highlighting. That's and just right. Saying, like, look around you in the immediate vicinity first, or find the value or the revolution in what you have, and not necessarily that you need to find this bigger or more ideal stage, as the story shows. There's a big miss there, and I think the story's related to the there's a mine in South Africa called the Kimberley mine, and I think that's the one that a farmer.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that. I've been telling the story for decades, and I didn't know that. Yeah, it's a true story. It's a true story.
It was like a Kimberley diamond rush, and now I think it's more the big companies have it at this point. But yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah,
but appreciating what you have to solve the problem within your bounds, I think, is something to consider too, and not trying to solve the problem by just clearing the table and starting anew, because then you'll solve the problem. I think it's maybe there's some wisdom buried here in having that solution before you already, and maybe you didn't know about it. Just like how cosmic, that kind of awareness or that higher consciousness is available already.
Totally about it. Yeah. Yeah, he went in the story. He goes looking, and he's not looking where it is, which is in himself, and so he gets frustrated because he's looking in the wrong place. Again, a theme we've seen in a bunch of the stories and chapters in the past. Revolutionary ideas reside within that universal consciousness. And that universal consciousness is accessible to everybody internally. And so we have to start getting more comfortable with accessing consciousness and become familiar with the way we can access it, which is sitting in stillness, not necessarily meditating, but being present and allowing for what is to be. If he would have allowed what is, the story would have had a much happier ending, which was to be Indeed. Present, right?
Yeah.
But he wasn't being present with what is, and that's where he went off the rails.
Yeah. So it actually has some connections too to just not looking too far into the future, or not living in the future or the past, as we discussed in the previous section, and becoming a museum of your experiences, or not just dreaming that it's all in the future when this final thing happens. When you find that diamond mine, you're going to be so rich. It's more about like questioning and then maybe trying to revolutionize there within your means. Like, is there a dime? Could I put a diamond mine here? Is there anything to mine on my land? Maybe I could start from here. Like those kinds of processes in an analogous kind of way are, I think, what we're trying to get to here. And I've definitely seen teams in a business sense try to make roster changes or try to reorganize to solve a problem that probably should have been solved by the previous organization. Maybe they would shake up the teams and say like, hey, we got to solve this big problem. Let's move all of team A and split them across the next 3 teams, where before team A used to own something maybe, and you don't realize what you've messed up or kind of what you've disrupted there. So I think in a few ways I've seen this happen kind of in a business sense as well, where people get too excited about the diamond mine. Another very obvious example would be in software development. There's something called shiny object syndrome, which aligns perfectly with this, because that's, I think, exactly what the farmer ran into. And that is you see a shiny object, or you think of one, and you run towards it. You race towards that. You start developing to build it. You maybe sell your farm and move to go find it, and you don't realize that there were some objects that were maybe not as shiny, but could have been if you just worked on them. So for businesses, they can move away from their core values that way with shiny object syndrome and end up focusing on like too many projects and not what their real product really is.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of scattershot type thing, or distraction.
Yeah, you could just get spread thin, or just completely off trail, and then over time, that just gets worse if you stay on that path.
No, but I like what you said about the future and the past. That's so much of the problem when we look at this idea of where's the diamonds. And where do you search for it? And again, it very relates to what we were talking about, the revolution. It's always, they go back to old thinking, or the future's really not the future, it's just an extension of the past. And they're never in the now of what is.
Yeah.
What is leads to universal consciousness. It's the doorway to universal consciousness, because when we're in the future, we're in our minds, and when we're in the past, we're in our minds. And a mind is the polar opposite of universal intelligence. It's the limited personal intelligence.
It's the finite representation of that, right?
Yeah, it's the Rob expression or the Paul expression, which is pretty limited in terms of my book knowledge, my life experience.
Pretty limited over here too.
Yeah. I mean, we're really, Paul and Rob, they're pretty limited. But if I could access that universal consciousness, that can heal my finger, that knows how to digest food, that knows, this intelligence that can translate sounds into vibrations, into sound and intelligence, that intelligence is so far above our personal intelligence. It's so far beyond that's where we have to begin to get comfortable with. And again, this book is not about technique, but about awareness. The solution to getting to higher consciousness is higher consciousness. It's not a technique. It's the very consciousness that we're talking about, that there's no technique. It's present right now. So if I did a technique, then I'm ignoring the presence of that intelligence.
Yeah, now you're looking at the future again.
You're getting in the future. You're saying I don't have it, which is a lie, because it's in the present. Consciousness exists throughout all of everything that we see and do. It's existing in the rock and in the dog and us, and it's a universal fabric of the universe. So to deny that and say, oh, I have to we'll get the solution then, or let's build up the past, then you're not there. The diamond is in this, in the now, the present. And when we access that, we have access to that universal intelligence that has infinite number of ideas, is so unlimited. And that's where these great ideas come from. Not so much the personality self, the personal self, but from the impersonal self. The impersonal self is something we have to begin to access and get more comfortable with, and see with our own eyes and our own inner wisdom that that's where the great ideas come from. How many times, again, I'm involved with music, have we heard somebody say, I wrote that hit song in 7 seconds? I mean,
we've heard that.
It just came to them. And, this is a universal experience that we don't even, because there's no time limitation to universal consciousness. There's only time limitation to egoic presence. But in universal presence, in universal intelligence, there is no time. So when you wrote that song, you don't remember writing it, because I actually had a hit song a couple of years ago in Europe that I co-wrote, and the truth was I don't remember writing it. I remember my writing partner came over that night, and she had some ideas, and I remember walking out on the porch for a minute at one point, but I don't remember actually writing it. I it just came down. Boom. That was the hook, and that was the lyric, and that's what it was. And we hear this story over and over and over of how this stuff happens. So I just want to encourage everybody on this chapter to begin to farm, to stay on the farm in this story.
Yeah, that's the advice.
Stay on the farm. You got it. Everything you need is there. Don't go looking.
If you're thinking about leaving, dig more holes first. Or get a second opinion.
Get a second opinion. Just hang out. Don't go running, and good things will happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah. So folks, you heard him. Get out there and have that confidence in where you are now in your situation with leadership, and find the solutions within that arena. You don't have to plan for the future or kind of shackle yourself to someday I'll do this or someday that. I appreciate you guys listening and watching. And as always, you can find the link for the book below in the show notes, and join us again on the next episode. If you haven't already, take a trek back through time. And as we just talked about in the higher consciousness sense, time isn't there. So you're free to go back and watch all the previous episodes. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Getting High on Leadership series. If you have any questions, you can comment below or send them in via email to paul@paulkarasik.com. Follow him on Instagram at PK_The Conversation. Find out more at wholesalerinstitute.com and psychedelic-awakening.com. The Getting High on Leadership series is produced by Rob Sanchez and Apartment 113, which can be found at apartment113.com and followed on Instagram at APT_113.